There we are. We are live. Hey, everybody. Tom Tracy Hazard here.
How
Feed
are
Your
you?
Brand Weekly Live Coaching Call.
Well, I know this is going to be a little bit controversial today, so I think we should just dive right in and talk about the future of podcast advertising. Because I
I'm
don't
in.
think the future is what lots of companies are investing in right now.
I agree. All right, let's do it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Feed Your Brand. I'm Tom Hazard, along with my co host, Tracy Hazard. Today, we're going to talk with you about why programmatic ads are a waste of time. Really, we're going to talk about the future of podcast advertising. And a lot of you might be surprised with what we have to say. We're not shy about this topic and might be a little controversial.
I don't know what we're shy about in the podcast industry. I don't think the shy would ever describe either one of us. But that's the great part, right? I'm going to tell you like it is. We are going to absolutely give you the straight shot at what's going on here.
And
So
programmatic ads are really rarely in anybody's interest. And I mean anybody. I mean the advertiser, the podcaster, the podcast listener. I mean, it's really the trifecta of mediocrity, if you ask me.
I'm programmatic podcast ads are a total waste of time. That's like my absolute opinion. Anyone who's investing in the technology to do more programmatic ads are wasting their money unless they are getting detailed and targeted. And I am not seeing that anywhere. In fact, I'm seeing it broader and broader and broader. And the real problem is, Tom, right? As you and I both know, it's because it's a numbers game. When you have programmatic ads, you're selling them and you need more shows to put them on because the conversion rates are so low. So you got to
And
have the numbers that way up on downloads, right?
yeah, ding, ding, ding. The conversion rates are so low. Why? It's a shotgun approach. You're not targeting any specific demographic of people. You're not targeting any, specific interests of people. You're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it's going to be relevant to some people. And that's why the rates for the ads are so darn low. It's because the return is low.
And the more that the return is low, the lower the rates will be and the less people who benefit from this. So it's all in all a losing proposition, a race to the bottom with programmatic ads. And I think that's number one reason why we're seeing less and less of this working for people and less people opting in, which is making it even harder for you to achieve it. But we're also seeing the dollars go up on the other side of it. So I just want to create this like dichotomy of it. We hear about all these amazing shows like Better Call Daddy and the Kelsey show. I forgot what it's called. Uh, Something
What, the
Heights.
Kelsey brothers? I don't actually
Something
remember the name
Heights.
of that
Anyway,
show, but yeah.
Something Heights. Anyway, it's a great show. I can't remember it for the life of me, but it's where they used to live. Anyway, they're getting lots of great deals. Why? Because it's more than the deal for the podcast advertisement. They're getting association with a celebrity, they're getting association with a great show, they're getting guaranteed listener growth that is happening on those shows. So it's a very different proposition at the top, but there are so few shows like that. I can count on maybe under 10. Under 10. New Heights. That's the name of the show, right? New
That
Heights.
is the name of the show. Yeah. Sorry, I just mentioned it too. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. New Heights, yeah. But this is the new heights of podcasting. There's probably less than 10 shows. 10 shows that qualify for that kind of dollars and deserve it. There are shows out there who get it, who don't deserve it. Like Meghan Markle's show did not deserve the ad dollars that it didn't make it in terms of audience. So, but they sold it because it had a name associated with it. So that happens a lot too. So it's perception, but then the results don't come out, the show doesn't stick, right? That's what we see a lot. I think the iHeart model is very clear on that. Like you see a perfectly great show and it never makes it out of season 1. Why does that happen? It's because the ad dollars weren't there. Really clearly there were no ad dollars. It couldn't achieve the sales that they anticipated on it.
Very disappointing. when you go and put all that effort into it.
Right. So that top is not a measure of how the rest of the industry is doing and whether or not we should participate in programmatic ads, whether joining a network who's promising you programmatic ads is going to succeed. Oh, I mean, unless they give you guaranteed dollars up front, I wouldn't do it. I would
And
never sign.
I've, got some podcasters that we work with that have really good shows that are, reaching a decent audience of thousands of people every month. I mean, for an independent show, that's good. And obviously, I know everybody would love tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. And those shows are out there, and a lot of you have those kind of audiences. But a lot of independent shows providing great value, a few thousand to five, 6,000, listeners. And I'm not even talking about like downloads and stuff, but just, listeners or how many people listen to the average episode. Okay. And the reality is, even if you put programmatic ads on decent independent shows like that, you know how much money people are making on that? I mean, it's so little that the podcasters that do it can't even tell me how much money they make when I ask them. Like, oh, I don't know, 20 bucks, 30 bucks a month. It's like, okay, what are you doing?
Well,
Because
and
all you're
so
doing is, annoying your audience
Well, so
for a
let's talk
few
about that part of it,
bucks.
Tom. So,
Okay.
programmatic ads are programmatic, meaning they belong to the programming of whoever is serving them up. So, for some, that might be Megaphone, Spotify. For others, that might be the network itself that is programming in the ads. Some might be on iHeart, as I mentioned before, and iHeart controls the ads or Sirius controls the ads, something like that. How they're served to your show is a mechanism, right? Like that's Megaphone's mechanism or some other server's mechanism. At Advertise, we have our own ad server that is independently controlled by each show, not in a programmatic way, although you can do that too. But we just choose not to for a reason, right? And so think of it like you sell blanket ads to any number of shows. The advertiser doesn't get a vote in what shows they go on for the most part, like unless you're at the elite level and you're buying to the one show, but you don't get it. You don't have any idea what show you're advertising on. And the show host doesn't get a vote in what ads run on their show, right? It's run of program, run of show, run of network, right? All of those types of terms you may have heard in the radio industry. So this is very old school. That's what I want to point out is that programmatic advertising, selling that, distributing it is an extremely old school model, and it is based on as many impressions as you can get of the ad, right? How many times can that ad be played? Because that's how they make their money. They do not care about the show. They do not care about anything else. They just care about the numbers of how many times it's played.
That's absolutely right. And it takes aggregating an awful lot of independent podcasts in order to make any kind of volume of plays of those ads that are going to be valuable to the advertiser. And that's why programmatic ads are, they're trying to get anybody and everybody to sign up to be a part of it because they need an awful lot of little shows to create a big enough total number of impressions that's going to meet the need of the advertiser. And let's, not kid ourselves, the need of the advertising distributor and or the podcast hosting platform that is brokering those, advertising deals. They're making money and making actually usually about half of the money that is
Oh, up to
allocated toward your
70% in a lot of
show.
places. So
Yeah.
it's even up to 70% in a lot of places. So you're getting 30%. So your net is very low. And so that's the biggest problem right there, Tom, is like you're mentioning is the layering of it, right? So the advertiser puts the dollars in, so whoever sold the ads makes the first cut. Then the next cut goes to the distribution platform. Then the next cut sometimes goes to the hosting platform on top of that, who is maybe facilitating that. So, because there's ad distribution and distribution into the shows. So you have a multi layered before the rest of it is distributed to the host. So when you can only sell it for under 20 bucks, and that's the going rate right now is just under 20 bucks per 1,000 listeners. per 1,000 plays of that ad, right? Like think about that. It's not per 1,000. So $20 for that. And your cut ends up somewhere around, you know, $7 to $10 maybe.
And I've even experienced some programmatic ad, um, distributors that are only offering in the $3 and $4 CPM net, after all the other cuts are divided up. And it's that's why you get somebody who has, let's say, 5, 6 thousand, plays over a month. You can make like 25 or $30. I mean, is that even worth your time to sign up and be a part of it and to distract your audience? Because I mean, you also, like you said, Tracy, don't get any control over what those ads are that play to your audience. And we have some, shall we say, family friendly shows that were shocked that, people that were participating in programmatic ads, and this is something that prompted them to leave that platform and come over to advertise, was because they had no control of those ads. And they actually, on a family friendly show that's talking about youth, girls issues and parenting and all that, had ads for condoms on their show, and they had no control over it. They're like, how did this happen? It's like, well, you have to talk to that ad distribution network or whoever you signed up with to do this, because they're in control of it.
But the majority of them have no mechanism to control or block your show from it because of how it's run of network and programmatic across it. They have no way to block that. So you are stuck with who's ever advertising. And today there's a lot of shady supplements out there. If you're a health and wellness podcaster, you may not want them advertising on your show. There are things that are incongruous with your messaging on your show. And that's why, frankly, we've never agreed to it. We get contacted by many, many ad distribution groups because we have a very large selection of podcasts in our network who are also very well produced shows, right? Because we also have production services. So we
And
have the
it's
combinations
quality
too. So
content.
higher quality, right? And more commitment to it and continuity, which is really helpful to them because it doesn't do any good to sign up and have them be pod faded after 10 shows and it's no good anymore, right? So it's a lot of effort for those distribution companies, but they come to us. But until they give us control, where we can block a show, where we can block these things, until they allow us to do that, we are not going to participate. It doesn't make any sense. So I want to know what ads coming in, and they can't give you that information.
No, because it's not decided what ad is going to be inserted into your episode or at the beginning before it plays until the moment that somebody presses play in their app requesting the episode be played. I mean, all this stuff happens in real time most of the time. There are some systems that it may be, you know, put on in the MP3 file for a period of time, but usually not. Usually they're just actively played right at the beginning.
But here's what most of you don't know. So you go and you get like sold a good bill of goods on how fabulous you're going to make a couple $100 a month, whatever this is. They offer you that makes you think, okay, I can fund my show. This is going to be worth it to me. I mean, I wouldn't do it for less than 5,000 personally, like that at that level, but that's totally not me. You might be willing to do it for a couple $100 or $100. Let's just say $100. So $100 guarantee, they promise you they're going to serve up enough ads. In order to serve up enough ads, they may have to cram your show just to make the $100 that's necessary to meet the minimum. They may have to cram your show with 3 minutes worth of ads at the beginning just to get enough listens because you don't, or views, or, whatever you want, impressions. Let's keep calling them that. I think that's the easiest way to do it, right? Impressions of the ad. How many of your listeners are going to be so frustrated by 3 minutes worth of ads before you then play your sometimes 60-second intros? You guys have intros that are too long, but 30 to 60-second intro. So another minute goes by, and then you make your own offer. I hear it all the time because lots of you are coached out there by someone who told you you have to hit him in the first minute of your episode and make sure you make the offer because if they crash out, you got to make sure you sold them first. Well, that might be the biggest mistake you'll ever make. But now you've gone 5 minutes and you didn't give them anything. and you ask them for something of your own, and five other people in ads ask them for something, how willing to really be open-minded and listen to your message are they at that point?
It's really an old school approach that just doesn't work today. And yeah, I've heard those also 2.5, 3 minutes of ads before you ever get to customers' content. Guess what happens? People switch off and they don't get to the content. So that's the reality of it, and the big tip, right, for placement of ads and why again programmatic, because by the way, programmatic always puts them up front for the same reason we just mentioned for what Tracy just said, because whoever is distributing the ads has to guarantee that the ads get minimum get played, even if the rest of your podcast doesn't. So the only way they can guarantee that is to shove them all right up in the beginning of the episode. Okay. But for those of you that really care either to promote your own stuff, advertise your own stuff, or give real value to a sponsor who's paying, and you have more of a different kind of relationship that's not programmatic ads, the best place with the most conversion for an ad in your episode is in the post roll spots. And what I mean by that is 2/3, or later, 2/3, 3/4 of the way through your episode or later.
We have a whole podcast episode on that. We'll link that in the blog post for this episode so that you can go back to that and then find it. But we have absolutely gone over all the details of why that is so much higher conversion than any other ad spot. And it used to be when you would run radio ads, those would be the cheap spots. They would call them the post roll, right? The cheap spots
They were
in
almost
the
the
old school.
throwaway,
They were almost the
And actually, a
throwaway.
lot of people in podcasting still consider them to be throwaway ad spots today, and they either throw them in for free or they charge very little for them. Biggest mistake happening in podcast advertising today.
Totally agree. Well, I want to just address one more thing when you were talking about them putting at the beginning, Thomas. This is why, and this is the big aha for most of you out there. The reason it's called a start and they track it at Spotify is because they report that to the advertiser, not because they care about your show at all. That has nothing to do with you. It is making sure that that 60 seconds worth of ad was played and that they can get paid for it from the advertiser. That's why they're tracking it. It is not for you, your listeners, or anything having to do with the quality of your show, the conversion rates on your show, making these advertisings worth anything. It is just making sure that Spotify gets paid for actually running the ad. That's it. So this is a good indicator that it's not working. So if programmatic ads are a complete waste of time, what needs to happen in the industry? Where's the future of podcasting? That's what we're here to talk about today, right? To finish that up and wrap onto the flip side of that. Tom, what are your thoughts on that? Where do you think
Yeah.
the future of advertising really is?
Thank you for bringing me back to reality, because I was, getting a little ranty there because
And
I
a little
just am
depressed, right?
yeah, it makes my blood pressure rise just
Right. I'm
thinking about how
angry
many
for our
people.
podcast
Yeah.
hosts. Aren't you angry for them that they're getting so scammed in this process and cheated and it's not working and they're putting in all the work? It's their content people are making money off of. So I do agree with you. I'm ranting about it, but let's flip it to where it needs to be, where that future really is. Where is the future of podcast advertising?
Future podcast advertising is, to me, can be summed up in one word, although there's a lot of, different variations and facets to it. But to me, it's relevance.
I agree. That's such a great word for it. But I mean, Google has proven that relevance matters, right? Like if we get the keywords right, if we get the audience right, if we get all these things right. But today, I think relevance is even higher because of AI. Our consumers, whether they're our listeners or the person who's going to click through, buy something, or listen and buy something, right? That consumer expects relevance. They expect everything to be smarter. The fact that these programmatic ads are so dumb in a smart world, there's no excuse for it. AI has proven that it's not needed the way that it is. So the technology, the process, the systems, these networks, they're all archaic. And your listeners know that. And when they hear that, they go, why would I want to give my business to this company? They're
Right.
not
I agree.
serving me. They don't know me. They don't understand me. And the problem is when you, the podcast host, opt into those things, when you're not making enough money, especially like, I mean, if you're making millions off of it, go do it. Like, just do it. But if you're not, you're telling your audience that you don't care about them. You're telling them that their relevance, that your curation of things is not as important as you making $10. So your audience isn't going to value you or trust you. That's harmful. So we have to flip that into relevance. I totally agree with that, Tom. What does relevance look like? To me, it looks like targeted ads, like really specific ads that are really targeted, not just to the type of show, because that sometimes happens when you broker your own across the board ads. I mean, when we used to do our 3D print show, we had 3D print relevant ads, right? But making it relevant to the topic of the show as well, the episode level itself.
That really makes a lot of sense, Tracy. And the problem with programmatic is they can't engage at that level, right? But believe me, you structure a deal with a advertising partner or with a sponsor directly, and you have content that is very relevant to what that company either is selling or to the people that company is trying to reach, then you're going to get a whole lot more engagement and conversion from the listener because you've given them something that's in alignment with their needs, their interests. It's not out of left field.
Right. And I think also baked in ads have a problem. They're as archaic as the programmatic ads. So let's be clear here. And baked in ads mean you took an advertiser in and you edited them into your audio file. You edit them into your show and they're stuck in there and they stay there. We don't do that at Podetize. We actually got rid of that a long time ago because when and the story goes that when we started our podcast and we took our first advertiser who happened to be MakerBot, and MakerBot was one of the largest manufacturers at the time. I mean, they invented home 3D printing, right? Like, I mean, it was they sort of championed that whole time period.
Really, that industry, the
Yeah.
yeah.
And so they were our first advertiser, and we were doing 5 episodes a week, so we had a lot of content. We were going to edit all the ads in, and I went to our editor, who's today now our son-in-law, who edits another show, and he said, "Oh, it's going to cost just as much to remove those ads at the end of the month as it is to put them in." Because I wanted to sell the ads on a monthly basis because what happens if MakerBot's model changed next month or something different happened? I didn't want to have old, irrelevant ads in my show past a month. I also wanted to maximize the dollars we could make, so I wanted to sell a month's worth of listens, right? So he was like, it's going to cost just as much to edit them out. So many of you who do baked ads, you put them in and you never take them out. So we invented a system. It's part of how Podetize got started. So I mean, sorry, I'm not selling you on it. I'm just trying to tell you the story. But we invented a system where we could take ads in and take them out and bake them anywhere within the show so they didn't run on the front and the back. Because that's what we didn't want. We wanted to, we knew the relevant positions were after you delivered some content, then put the ad because they're more accepting of that ad at that time period. So that's what we did. And that's how Podetize came about. So baked in ads are in just as much trouble as programmatic ads because they're no longer relevant, right? When they age out and they're stuck in your show, but yet new listeners find your show, binge on the whole thing, and now they get these really outdated, either time sensitive ads that are no longer the sales, whatever was running is no longer running. The companies are out of business. That happens all the time with a lot of e-commerce. There's no product left to buy. There's frustration to your listener on that. And it says, you don't take enough care of me, the listener, to keep me updated. That's a problem too.
Yeah, it just further dates your episodes. And the reality is, old episodes get listened to by new listeners every day. They really do.
Do you remember the numbers? We just checked the 3D WTFFF, the 3D print podcast. We just checked it the other day and we were like, guys, still getting listens every month. It still gets over 1,000 listens a month.
Oh no, well more than that.
Well, more than that, like 3,000 or something. Anyway, it still gets listens every month, which means that they were listening to old shows. Which if we left those ads in there, which because we have a system where you can just take them out, which we did, right? If we left those ads in there, they'd be served up ads for stuff that doesn't exist anymore. That would be terrible.
It really would be terrible. It makes no sense. And, anybody who's had a podcast for any length of time and you look at your analytics, you're going to find that, the plays that you have every month do not come from just the new episodes that you're publishing that month. In fact, in most cases, more than half come from episodes that published in previous months. News people are finding your show and they go back and listen to old episodes. Why should they hear an old, outdated, no longer relevant promotion? And even if you don't have a modern one to run, take the old one out so there's none in it. That makes, sense too sometimes for a period of time. But
Right. And
no,
then one more thing that I always think is really is that sometimes we cover a really sensitive topic. Like you were mentioning, that we have a show that is dealing with teen daughters, teen girls. And if you had a really sensitive subject about that, the last thing you want to do is run any ads in such a serious show. So being able to block a single episode from an ad is critical as well. And that most of the programmatic ad companies don't allow that. It's like any show, every show, anywhere they want to put it, you're stuck into it once you sign on with them. So that's also something that I'm really careful about. It's one of the things we built in too, because I never wanted to see that. We had done an episode on 3D print guns. The last thing I wanted was such a serious subject to be surrounded by some bubbly kind of like, ad or something irrelevant. Like it would have been terrible. So we always blocked that episode. So there's things like that that you do need to think about as well. So relevance, I agree with you, Tom. Relevance, targeting, alignment with your audience, the putting it at the right times to where they're ripe to make a choice, to choose to do something. Once I've listened to most of the stuff, like you talked about that post roll or that last quarter of this episode, I'm ready for what's next. I'm open to the idea of what's next. Great place to put it. The other thing is that most ads are so difficult to take action from. They are
absolutely.
so
That's
hard.
that's one of the things that I I sometimes just laugh when I am listening to a new show. It's usually somebody that I'm, evaluating their podcast and doing a podcast power appraisal for them. And I need to listen to their show. In the very beginning, I hear these, often programmatic ads, and then they recite this long web URL. Then they, first of all, they didn't create a short referral URL, which would be the number one thing I would do. But then you're going to recite it, and especially ones that have an unusual spelling or anything. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm driving the car listening to your podcast, and I can't, first of all, type that in to my phone as I'm driving to try to go there. And if I've got to try to remember it and go back to that later, it's just not likely to happen.
Well,
So,
and again,
how?
radio old school model of it, repeat the number, but there was one number. There
And it
wasn't a
was a
URL.
phone number, 800 something, and it was memorable, right? 1-800 mattress, which, I always remember from when we lived in New York City area. And, that ran all the time. And boy, that was easy. You can remember that, sure. Right. And when
So,
I don't think
we were
even
watching I'm going to date this episode in time, but we were watching the baseball playoffs. And so we watched a lot of ads in the last week, which we don't normally do, right? We normally don't stream everything and don't watch any ads at all, but we were watching ads. And I was noticing even on the television, the streaming shows, there were no mentions. No website addresses announced, no phone numbers announced. They would say to the number on this screen, to the
or
QR code here.
yeah, that was what I was going to
Right.
say. The other thing you're seeing on all the modern ads these days are QR codes, so you can hold your phone up from wherever you're sitting on your couch or wherever, and then it'll take you to a landing page for that ad. Now, we don't have QR codes in podcasting, but what do we have? Wherever anybody
Episode
is listening
descriptions.
is the description. And this is the new modern thing that, again, not to oversell poditize, but I mean, there's a good reason why we've developed some of the things that we have to help people monetize their shows in not only an easier way, but in a practical way that's going to convert. You got to make it easy for the podcaster and not be reciting go to. And I hate it these days when people recite a web address, they say www dot.
Oh, stop
Can we
saying
just all agree to
WW.
drop the www right now because it's unnecessary? Every web browser, every web URL, you don't have to put that in anymore. That's a very much Internet 1.0 need. So anyway, whatever the URL is, the whatever.com, but you don't even have to do that. And the great thing is, a lot of times you want to change the landing page. You could use the same ad, you're selling the same thing for the same sponsor or for yourself month after month, but you want to change the landing page. You're making the offer a little different. You're changing the discount, whatever it is, right? All you have to do is say, click the link in the description.
Or check out our discount in the description, right? And so
Right.
you're enticing them to go look at it, makes it easy to click through and go to that. That is the new way of looking at things, and that cannot happen with programmatic ads because programmatic ads cannot touch anything about your show.
No, it's only in the audio itself. So all they can do is make an audible call to action to try to send you somewhere else. Now, you know, a savvy podcaster who knew what the ads were going to be, and again, with programmatic, you don't know, you could put an ad in your description. But Tracy, we are just reviewing a podcast on Advertise, has 1,000 episodes. And some of those popular ones are early episodes. You think that podcaster is going back and changing links in the descriptions of all 1,000 episodes
It's a lot
for
of
a
work.
sponsor? It is a lot of work, unless you have software that does it for you, which is, again, we're
targeting
podcasters. We've
targeting
experienced
relevance
this.
future, right? Being able to
Yeah.
make sure that you're tracking, that's like the next part of relevance, right? Because if I want to sell ads and I want to get my sponsors, I need to show them proof that people click through, that people did something. So I've got to track it. And that tracking is so bad right now. It's what's downing the programmatic dollars. It keeps downing them because the tracking isn't working. Because how do you track from somebody having listened to a phone number, listened to a URL, and then typing it in somewhere? There's no tracking. There's no ability. There's no UTM codes for those of you who do that in your links, right? It's not working. And that's why that old school model is just never going to stick. It is not going to be around. So the future of programmatic podcast ads, I think it's done. I think there's
Well,
just people who haven't given up yet because they haven't figured out what to replace it with.
yeah, they'll keep trying to do it just because there are some people making money on it. It's just not the podcaster, right? Who's
Yeah. And it's
making
going to
money on it.
take us boycotting it, honestly. Us podcasters need to boycott. If you don't pay us enough money, we're not giving you our content to put ads on. Stop doing it. That means you stop hosting with the free hosting companies like Anchor. You stop hosting over at those places and they don't have an ability to put ads on your show. Like that's it. Like you're in control of that. So you make those choices different and you will change the industry for everyone. So that's also the future is to take control. And if you are not willing to take control of your content, you will never be a true influencer. An influencer has to take responsibility for the choices that they're making. Now, there are lots of influencers and YouTubers and other people out there who I think are making very bad choices, and they're very harmful to who they're influencing.
But they're making the choices,
But they
Tracy.
are making those choices. And now some of them are getting held responsible for those choices
Yeah.
too. So you have to remember that. And that is one of the reasons why Tom and I always liked the idea of being able to remove ads, because we had companies that we did business with that we would never, when we found out more about them, we would remove their
Oh my
ads.
gosh.
Yeah, I mean, we would
We've had to
remove their
delete,
episodes.
we actually had to delete a few episodes because we had interviews with like CEO of a company who now is in federal prison for one thing or another, right? So, I mean,
So
that
you've got
stuff
to make
happens.
those responsible choices, and you're not in control of making those responsible choices in programmatic ad model. And if you're baking in your ads and you're never taking the time and energy to removing them or removing the links or updating your descriptions, then you are also being irresponsible when things go wrong. So you need to, when you know something happened that was wrong, it's one thing to not know, but another thing, when you do find out that something occurred, go remove your episodes, go fix them. This is your
Yeah,
responsibility to keep your audience safe, because if they don't feel safe with you, if they feel like you scammed them, then they will never trust you, and your influence is useless.
absolutely. And the new function, and I was serious about 1,000 episodes. You're not going to change links, but if you use a system, and truly we invented this one and it's patent pending, so I don't think anybody else is doing anything like it, where with your audio ad goes in a call to action and link into the description, and it comes out when you remove it, so you don't have to manually do it. That's the only way it's going to work, especially when
So
you get a lot of episodes.
right. So check them out, because we did that on our preview episodes here. So if you haven't seen them, they're called Next Up. And so we've been giving you a little sneak peek of the next live stream, because you podcast listeners out there who are listening to the show really are getting it like 3 weeks after it aired. So it aired live on LinkedIn, YouTube. Obviously, we're here in Zoom answering questions from our audience there as well. So there's, I think we might be live on Facebook as well.
I think so.
Yeah, so we're at least live in 3 places, and we wanted you to know that we were live so you could catch it sooner if you were interested. So we started putting out these next up episodes. They're like under 3 minutes. They're, just a couple of minutes of Tom or I telling you about what's coming up, what this next episode's going to be about. And in that, we utilized our own ad system to drop the links in so that you could go straight to the event page, because the event page is different every time we do it. The event page changes, it's new. So we did that so that it could rotate and get you straight to the event you're looking for.
Well, that's the way things should be. It should be changing. It should be relevant. It should be, never be aging out. I mean, gosh, even when they run reruns of, which drives me nuts, like late night TV or something, any of the late night shows, choose your preference. When they run reruns, they don't run old commercials. They're always
Right.
running current ones, right? So why are you doing it different? By the way, just for reference to close the loop on WTFFF listenership, Tracy, in the last month, all the episodes received almost 5,000 total downloads.
Oh,
I just
wow.
looked at all the
It's
numbers.
up again. Maybe it's up because of the fall. Like I think
I don't
last time
know.
I really checked it out was the summer. Sometimes it's
Maybe
lower in the summer. But yeah, I mean, look, we haven't produced that show since June
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
I think
And
we
it's still
maybe
getting
did one
over.
show in 20, one episode in 2021. We did like a preview
I've
of that.
recorded a limited series to sort of resurrect it because I had a topic to do, but I haven't published it. I haven't put it
Of
out.
course
It's
not.
just I'm too busy. The cobbler's kids have no shoes. That it's something I'm passionate about, but I don't really have a lot of time to
Right, but
deal with it.
5,000 listens a month isn't nothing.
It's probably worth putting out there some new content to keep that audience a little fresh. But anyway, the point is it still has value.
Or sell the show
Yeah,
to
yeah,
somebody who
yeah.
wants to
So
take it over,
that's
right?
true. Yeah, yeah. That's always a
See, there's
possibility.
always some way to like think about how you could be utilizing your show, right? How
Hmm.
could you be doing something that is really helping your audience get more when you're done with something?
Well, and remember, Hewlett Packard came to us to advertise on that show in 2019 to 2020. What was it? I forget.
Yeah,
Somewhere
that
in
was,
there.
it ran in June of 2020. We ran the series, the
All right.
25
And they
episode
did
series.
that not as much because the podcast downloads were what they were interested in. It was more because of the web content we created and how our website was ranking on the first page of Google search, which is because of all that content was created from the podcast. So advertising on the podcast was a means to an end to reach their audience, and they didn't care if it was people that listened to the show or visited the website. That's what their goal was. So anyway, lots of things to consider in the modern world of sponsorship and monetizing your podcast. It's not just one thing to do, there's many different things to do. And just make sure you're not jumping on the easy bandwagon and you're just going to set
And
yourself up for
expecting
disappointment.
high results. Yeah. This is the other
Well,
thing that I just want to leave you with is like, if anyone makes you sign a contract that commits you to a year, don't do it.
I would run the other direction pretty
Yeah.
quick because, I
And if
mean,
anyone requires you to give them your username and password to your hosting, or they take over your hosting for you, and you now have a producer's account or a network account, run the other way as well.
oh my
You
gosh, I'm
need to
really
stay in control of
surprised
your show.
how many podcasters I meet don't actually have access to and control over their own analytics. They don't even see it, and producers or networks don't share it with them. I can't, it's really shocking to me that people
Yep.
actually agree to that and don't have the ability to see their own numbers. I'm sorry, but I need to see
That's
it.
because a lot of it's not true. Like I'm
And
just gonna
that's, I
tell you.
mean, that's my doubt and skepticism meter goes up really high. If they're not going to show you the numbers, or they're going to screenshot and send you screenshots. I mean, I've actually seen very falsified numbers from people in the podcast industry. You need to see your own numbers.
Yeah,
So just from a transparency perspective and being able to make smart decisions at your podcast, you should always be able to see your own numbers. And this is a very important aspect of monetizing your podcast, right? You've got to know what the real numbers are.
absolutely. All right, let's wrap up today and this future of podcast advertising. I, I'm sorry, but I think the nail is in the coffin of the programmatic podcast ads. They just don't know they're trapped in it yet. Like I feel like that's the case.
They're asleep and they don't know they've been buried already, huh?
That's right. They're buried alive
Maybe.
and they don't know it
We'll
yet.
see.
But it's gonna, we'll see. I think it's still there for the elites, but just not for the rest of
No,
us.
no, it's I mean, look, the big, heavily produced, the
Heavily
big,
promoted.
heavily promoted, the ones that have the most money behind them. But you're right, Tracy. It's not the independent podcaster.
It's not
It's
our
really
game.
not. Yeah.
All right, we'll be back next week. Don't forget podcastersunited.org. You can sign up there for our newsletter, which has tips and all past episodes and all kinds of things. Nothing. We sell nothing through that newsletter. That is the only thing we will send you. It is a complete nonprofit organization, and the only thing we send you is the newsletter. And it gives you the topic for next week. And so you'll always have the topic a week ahead of time, or the day ahead of time. So go there, podcastersunited.org, and sign up for the newsletter.
All right. Until next time, it's been Tom and Tracy Hazard on Feed Your Brand.